Welcome to Voices of the Ancestors, where we explore Georgian polyphonic songs
and the women who sing them. So, welcome to Series 2, Episode 2 of Voices of the Ancestors. The voices today are Holly Taylor-Zuntz and Susan Thompson, that's me, and our guest is Nino Razmadze.
Our interview with Nino gives a really broad overview of all the folk instruments of Georgia. So if you want to know your chuniris from your changis, from your chionuris, this episode is going to help you out. And if you really want to get stuck in, we've even included photos of the instruments in the transcript. So you could click the link in the show notes and follow along while listening. Just not if you're driving, obviously. So my favourite bit of the interview was when Nino talked about the spiritual significance of the folk instruments, for example, in rituals like the batonebo. And she even told us some kind of creepy legends about the instruments being made out of dead people.
Oh, that was so... Oh, I had no idea the interview was going to go there, to go into body parts. Ooh. I mean, I've always wanted to interview Nino because I met her in the UK. She was a postgraduate student and she was working with a professor, Jeremy Montague, and he was the curator of the Bake collection of musical instruments in Oxford. And you'll hear in the interview how their research really put the Georgian folk instruments on the map of the international museum world. I mean, Nino has many strings to her bow, pun intended. She's an ethnomusicologist. She works at the Conservatoire in Tbilisi. She works at the Chanting Foundation in Tbilisi. She has many publications to her name. And in her early years, she did a lot of field work in Ajara, which really led to her very wide interest in folklore in general, not just music, but she's done a whole project on the textile ornaments from Ajara. She had to put something novel into this project, so she didn't just organise for these embroideries to be photographed and described. They were also created computer vector files so that any designer anywhere can use the file to use those designs on their pieces. And we'll put a link in the show notes for that.
Yeah, that is so great. And I'm sure some of our listeners might want to get handy with the embroidery.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So if folk music and folk textiles weren't enough, she's also now created a toy company called Gogora, which is using these patterns to create toys in those shapes. So, yeah, watch this space for that.
Absolutely.
So our chat with Nino happened back in October 2022 in an Airbnb in Tbilisi, and we'd all been together at the symposium on Polyphony, and we'd had a few weeks to recover from that because we'd had a bit of a crazy time, hadn't we? Susan and I had been presenting our new episode, the first episode of Series 2, which was with Tamar Bawadze, and we were celebrating 2 years of the podcast.
Well, we certainly were. And Nino was full on busy because she's part of the organising team for the whole thing. So, and then you and I, Holly, with our friend Jenny, were part of the opening gala concert. And I can't tell you what a bill that was to be on. There was Zetamze, or Friends of Zetamze, Ialoni, Nanina, Satanao, Margaliti. I don't know if you've got a theme here, but all these are women's groups. There was Leila Tataridze, who plays Garmani from Tusheti. So many. And we did have to tease one group, the Chemgeliani sisters. There are 3 sisters and they do sing together, but only 2 of them made it down from Svaneti. So they managed to twist Levan Bitarov's arm behind his back and get him to come and sing with them. And he only realised on the night that he was practically the only man on the bill the whole night.
Yes, and so the reason that this whole concert was celebrating the best women in Georgia was that it was the presentation of a really special new book, which is all about the UNESCO practices of women folk singers in Europe. Mm-hmm. And Nino's paper is included in that book, and we'll talk more about that in the episode.
That's right. Yeah, so after that glorious time when Holly and I were both in Georgia at the same time, Holly went back to the UK, and fortuitously I ended up in Georgia when there were so many concerts. There was a national folk competition, and I was lucky enough to go to many of those concerts, both in Tbilisi and in the provinces, in Kutaisi, and in Tel Aviv. And I took loads of videos, and I've uploaded, well, a good half of them onto our YouTube channel. So there's a lot more material there, and you'll enjoy every moment.
This is a chorumi from Merisi in Ajara, played on the Georgian bagpipe or chiboni. We'll introduce the key pieces of music as we go along, but not all of them, so just keep an eye on the transcript if you're curious, which you can find on our website. So, hope you enjoy our chat with Nino.
Hello.
Hello, Nino. Welcome.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine with you.
Thank you for being our guest on the podcast.
Thank you to invite me.
Would you mind introducing yourself to our listeners who've never met you before? Some of them.
I'm Nino Razmadze. I'm working at the Conservatoire in the International Research Center for Traditional Polyphony. We have a long name.
It's a mouthful.
Yes, of Tbilisi State Conservatoire.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, so I'm deputy director of the center, and I'm working in there maybe 10 or 12 years. Mm-hmm. So this is the place like my family. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm studying musical instruments, and I'm finishing my PhD maybe in this year, I hope. Yeah.
Is that on musical instruments?
Yes, Georgian musical instruments. My bachelor's diploma was about chonguri, then master diploma was about chuniri, and changi, and now I am writing about all Georgian musical instruments.
And now I'm going to ask you to take each of those in turn and tell us what each of those instruments are. So imagine somebody who's never seen one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of them are folk musical instruments. In different regions of Georgia has different kind of musical instruments, and some of them are more popular, and some of them it's near disappear. Yeah, and actually we have different kind of musical instruments. Yeah, it's chordophones, aerophones, idiophones also. Yeah, this is the professional names of type of musical instruments. Yeah, and also membranophones. For example, membranophones are doli and diplipito and
so
daira.
Drums. I know those as drums.
Yes,
so
they are drums.
Say that one
Diplipito.
Again. It has there are two. Aren't
Yes,
there,
two
side by
or
side.
three or four. Yeah.
Yeah.
And doli is very widespread in Georgia, you know, and
Yeah.
also maybe daira also, it's very well
the
known.
daira I think is the most beautiful. I think of it like a tambourine, but it's much more beautiful than a tambourine. There's a great photo of a daira on the album cover of Mountains of Tongues. This instrumental from Ratcha is played by Lola on Garmani and Grazia on daira. More about the Garmani later. For now, just know that it's like an accordion.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we have different kind of dairas. Yeah, for example, in museum we can see very nice dairas, and nowadays some of them doesn't have a lot of ornaments or something, but the voice is very, very nice and interesting. For example, for Rachan dance song, yeah, it's very, very good musical instrument. Yeah. Yeah, some of them are very popular. For example, panduri and chonguri.
So they're stringed instruments.
Yes, this is a group of string instruments. It's like lute type musical instruments are chonguri and panduri.
Here's the panduri, playing a dance tune, most probably from Kakheti. It's by the group Zetamze.
also we have bone musical instruments, chuniri, chianuri.
Bowed instruments. Yeah.
Yes, chianuri has 2 strings and chuniri has 3 strings from Svaneti, and chianuri is from Rachan mountain.
So here's the sound of chuniri from Svaneti. It's Anna Chamgeliani playing the introduction to Irinola. Other women in the Chemgeliani family from the singing village of Lakushti will feature later in our chat with Nino. And am I right in thinking when you, because we met in England when you were over studying.
Yeah.
And am I right in thinking you were putting a classification to all these different Georgian instruments?
Yes. Yeah, this classification system is coming from the museum work. For example, maybe 100 years before, Hornbostel and Sachs started this classification system, and maybe in the world, all museums use this system to classify musical instruments.
Okay.
Yes, and my professor from Oxford, Jeremy Montague, he helped me to make a classification numbers for Georgian musical instruments, because we didn't have it before. So after we published this catalogue of musical instruments from State Museum of Georgian folk songs and instruments, we gave each of them these classification numbers.
So that would enable you to speak about Georgian folk instruments internationally in a way that people will understand.
Yes, if you want to explain to somebody which kind of, for example, bone musical instruments you have, does it have an open end or not? Does it have a which kind of shape it has, for example, or how they're playing on them?
Yeah, because somebody's told me about, I think, is it chonguri? I've been explained there are 2 types. There's one where it's made out of a solid piece of wood, where the bowl part of it is. And then there's another where it's made out of individual planks, a bit like you make a ship.
And each of them has different number in classification system. Yes,
I see. And which region do these 2 styles come from?
This is not depends on region. It depends on the period when the people made them.
Okay.
Yeah, the oldest one is when chonguri is made from one piece. Yes, and later they started to make it with different parts, but it was because they changed the play, the shape and the size of the musical instrument. Yeah, the oldest chonguri is much smaller than new one.
And are people still making them both styles now?
Yes, and it's more old style chonguris with one piece.
Okay.
So then we have I mentioned idiophones. It's like bells and rattles, this kind of musical instruments.
Idiophone.
Idiophones, yes. It's a professional name of this group of musical instrument, and maybe you saw all of them in our church and also in eastern part of mountain in religion festivals or somewhere.
They're mostly used with rituals then?
Yes, yes, and it was more widespread in the past than now, but some people doesn't call them musical instruments.
Yeah, but they are.
Yes, but they are, of course. Yeah, and we had different shape of bells we use for cows, for example. Yeah.
Your cowbells in Georgia, they're delicious. I've been walking in woodland thinking, what's that? And realising it's just the gentle chink of this cowbell. And they can get so close and you can't see them through the trees, and yet you can hear them from a long way.
Yeah, and it helps to people to find their cows, for example.
Yeah.
It helps the cows to be more safe in the forest.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it has this spiritual meaning,
There's a spiritual meaning?
Yes, some of them, the owners thinks that these rattles will save their animals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And also in some manuscript, we had some information about that they were playing with the rattles also. But it was maybe in 17th century.
Who was playing? Like children were playing with it, or the cows?
Not children, the men were playing with the rattles.
Oh, they were playing them as musical instruments.
Yes.
Right, okay.
And they used more. So if you will go to the museum and you will see archaeological heritage, every time you can find a lot of rattles and bells. Yeah, because the material was bronze or something like this, so it preserved. Yeah.
Nino shared a piece by the men's ensemble Lashari for you to hear a wind instrument, the salamuri. It's a melody from Tushetti, and the salamuri joins what we think is a panduri.
And also we have this wind musical instruments,
salamuri,
wind musical instruments, salamuri and large ami and soinari. And this large ami and soinari we had in Samegrelo and Guria, but nowadays no one plays on them. The last musical recordings we have from 1960s and then disappeared. Because it was very difficult to play with this musical instrument, and the melody was very, very old, and people just forget them. Nowadays, there are some people, some young men who want to renovate them, but the musical instrument is the shape and also music together. Yeah, so this in music we have some problems. So and also tuning system was very, very difficult, and it's very difficult to play on traditional soinari on large ami today.
Salamuri is still played.
Salamuri is still, it's very popular, and also some new choirs started to play in two Salamuri together, and they added some holes and make the bigger range of notes.
Okay.
Of scale, and sometimes they're playing classical music too.
Wow.
With them.
Okay.
Yes.
Classical music on a folk instrument.
Yeah.
Oh, now that reminds me. So you're talking about a wind instrument being made bigger, but aren't there bass panduris that are like size of a person?
Yeah, it's from Soviet Union. They started this kind of modification of musical instruments, but we don't call them traditional folk musical instruments.
Okay, so that would be what, like 1930s around
Yes.
that area? Okay.
But it was more popular in Soviet Union.
Do you play it like a stand-up bass then?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh wow, I've never seen that before.
And also we have these bagpipes.
Oh, of course.
Two kind of bagpipes,
Yeah.
one from Raja and one from Ajara.
Okay.
Is that the Chiboni?
Chibani, the name is Chibani in Ajara and Gudastveri in Raja.
Gudastvili.
Okay, in Raja and also in Kartli.
Okay.
Also, we have some information that this eastern part of mountain in Tushati, for example, they or Pshavi, they used also this musical instrument.
That's actually quite a lot of folk instruments, isn't it?
Yes, and also it's very important that we have the Georgian names of musical instruments, and also Georgian names of the part of musical instruments.
Okay. Yeah.
And
So
also some legends.
what sort of legends?
Actually, it's always this connect with the deaf people.
Okay.
When somebody will make these musical instruments from the body of deaf people. Yeah. But this kind of legends is in different places in the world.
Really?
Yes.
So I'm going to get very morbid here, but what do you make out of the body of a dead person?
Yeah. For example, here,
The hair.
also
bones?
hand, bone.
Hand.
Yes.
Skin?
Not skin. No.
Like
No, skin, no.
the kind of ligaments maybe would make strings?
Ooh, I don't know.
No.
No.
For strings, they use hair.
Hair.
Okay.
Yes.
But is hair strong enough? I'm sorry, I'm big. It's like you
Yeah.
could use it for a bow, I guess.
You mean here?
But yeah,
Yes.
really.
Yeah.
For strings.
Wow. What? So a changi, perhaps the harp, because their strings aren't so long.
Yes. Actually, we used before nylon. We used horse.
Okay.
Okay.
Horsehair. Yeah.
Like a seamless super toast, it was time to move the conversation back to the land of the living. Next, Holly asks about accordions, or garmony, as they're called in Georgia. Here's a Tushetian dirge by Ketivan Nikoladze from Zitamze, played on a garmony.
And what about
Garmoni? Yeah, it came from. Some people think that it came from Russia, but some scholars think that it came from Germany.
Yeah.
Maybe just two century or something like this.
That's like
but Georgian
box kind of.
Yeah, I was going to say. So a garmoni has a keyboard or buttons.
Both.
Both. So a keyboard one end and buttons the other.
Yes, and Georgian made some models of Georgian, for example, Tusheti and Garmoni, and the scale is different than classical one.
Okay.
Yes. And it's very common in musical instruments in the world. When some musical instruments is going from one place to second place, they're changing the scale and sometimes the shape.
Yeah.
And if you can talking about Garmoni, when it came and from where, we can talk about this with the salamuri, for example, because this kind of musical instruments are in every place.
Yeah.
And the most important thing is that musical instrument must be connect with the singing tradition. For example, the scale must be same for singing and musical playing, and also the type of polyphony, for example. And if we have two strings, for example in chonguris, and one singer, this man or woman singer is singing one voice and playing another two voices with musical instrument. And if this singer will change the voice, for example, will start from the first voice and go to second voice and the bass, they are changing these voices on musical instrument.
Wow, did not know that.
Yeah, for example, if singers is singing first voice, they're playing second and bass on the instrument. If they're singing second voice, they're playing first and bass. But it's very interesting that sometimes the singers are singing the bass, but they are not playing second and first voice. They are playing bass and second or first voice on musical instrument. Yeah, it's because the bass is very important for musical instruments. You can hear it every time.
And I have a question. It's like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? So in
nobody knows.
In Tusheti, is it the singing that has the sound of a garmoni first, and then the garmoni comes along and people like it because it's like they're singing? Or does the garmoni come along and everybody goes, that's a gorgeous instrument, I want to sing like that?
For musical instruments, it came from singing, of course.
Okay.
Yes. And the oldest form of the playing and singing together, it's when one person is singing and with musical instruments, it make a bass.
Yeah. Okay.
Because bass is very important in Georgian polyphony.
Chemazala, Chemalazatiano, Khmagugone beloso pelmezo bisha, Shenegastum rebu, Stumar stumrulada, Shenatremgineda, Citriso denai. Modirali da masplafto de nai. Mogiko desse Chem tavi, chem zalo karagao. Veskarek chedava, shemo mi valisa. Verta sage belasa, chem zalo snatolosa. Mogi kodes chem tavi, bedita tsevelilo. Tralogu bisao, mdumarada gamadinaro, namo dilisao kachutrenelo, modu desdeda ichemzalo paragao.
And then I'm just thinking of we've mentioned so many instruments, but what about the tsiko? Because that's a is it an accordion?
Yeah, we have a different. It's a bandeon, like bandeon. We have different. Bandeon is a kind of in this musical instrument group.
Okay.
Okay, that's the classification.
So we have different kind of harmony or bandeon. And some of them we have just one example. For example, this.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, tsiko.
Yeah, there's only one in the family, and it's the tsiko. Okay, I get it. I think.
Yeah.
So you wrote a paper about all of this that was published recently at the 11th symposium. I won't go the whole name because it just takes too long.
But I would like to hear the name of your paper.
Yes.
What was it called?
The one that was published in the... I'm going to read it out because the issue of
gender...
Yeah, so the title is The Issue of Gender in Georgian Instrumental Music.
Yeah.
And it was published in The Women's Role in UNESCO-Recognised European Traditional Singing Practices.
Yes. When we started to make a plan what we would like to put on this book, I was working on the musical instrument and I chose this topic. So I wanted to collect all information about women and musical instruments in Georgia. Yeah, it's a very interesting situation because actually we don't know anybody who plays on soinari or lajami, but mostly women are playing in all musical instruments. Okay. Some of them are quite difficult to play, for example, bagpipes. But for example, chonguri or panduri is very usual for women playing. Also, salamuri is not very women instrument, I would say.
Not many women play it?
No.
So in the past I've read that it's the boys that learn how to play because they're out in the fields on their own with the sheep. So they're there with their pipes, so they learn to play. But that's not the case now.
Yeah. Mostly the string musical instruments is very popular in women playing. Yes. And also we have some of them who are playing on chiboni, for example. It's very difficult musical instrument to play because it needs a lot of energy and...
This is the bagpipe one,
but these two women are playing very well.
Oh, so, who's that?
From Achara, one is Ether Darchidze and his nephew, her nephew,
So her niece, if they're two women?
Yes, only these two women.
So Ether Darchidze and her niece, I think, is the...
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I often trip up when I'm reading things in Georgian because Georgian doesn't have a he and a her or a she and a him. So I can...
Or a niece and a nephew.
Or a niece and a nephew. So it's like, are they talking about a man or are they talking about a woman? I'm not sure.
And in this case, it's very important.
Exactly.
Yes, because we've met Etta, haven't we?
Yes.
Susan met her in her village.
Yes, with her mother and all her brothers and sisters. So that was so nice. And I heard that she was the first Gudastviri player.
Chiboni player.
She was the first woman.
Yes,
Chiboni player.
Actually, yes, because I don't know nobody who played on Chiboni before her.
Wow, I wonder what made her
learn it. I know.
Yeah, and also when we were in Turkey, in Inegal, where Acharan people are living there, some of our hosts told us that they know that some women who made Chiboni for the men.
Okay.
Yes, and they were talking about 2 women.
Oh, nice. But you didn't get to meet them, did you?
No, because they were talking about last period.
Oh, in the past.
And yes, and the recording we have, it's from 1963.
Okay.
But the man is playing.
Right.
But as they told, women made them and also cared about.
Looked after.
Chonuri.
Because they need quite a lot of maintenance. I know I've been sent into a jar to get a reed to mend one back in Tbilisi before now.
Wow.
So yeah.
So if you don't know how to care about this musical instrument, it will just destroy.
Yeah.
It's made of a sheep's stomach, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And are there other women makers making musical instruments in Georgia?
Yeah, we have some of them. For example, Fatih, who made Diblipita.
They're the double drums.
Yes. Actually, we have information about this musical instrument from all the manuscripts.
Is that Turmanidze?
Yeah, I think that was the name.
Turmanidze, yeah. Turmanidze. But it's disappeared also. We don't know how they played or what they played. So this woman started to make a new Diblipitas. And she found some information about the technique of manufacturing of this musical instrument, and we started.
Wow! Is the body made from clay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and actually, it's this type of musical instrument is coming from Islamic world. Yes.
Yeah. And are there any? When you were doing your research, did you find the names of women who were renowned as players of different instruments from the past, or?
No.
Oh, none at all?
No, but if we were talking about string musical instruments, they are a lot.
Yes.
Okay. For example, Gurian women and Kakhetian women who are playing, and also in Swaneti, it was very popular to playing on string musical instruments in chuniri, in changi.
Yeah, okay.
Let's hear Papiko Chemgaliani playing chuniri and singing Mirangula. She'll be mentioned later in the episode along with her nieces Anna and Madonna.
Changi. I read somewhere about there's a ritual called catching the soul.
Yes.
Will you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's not only about Changi, and also in choniri, and also in chonguri. This everything is talking about a string musical instrument group.
Okay.
Not only some of them. So when somebody will died, not at home but outside.
Yeah.
They thought that the soul is not with this body. Yeah. So they were going to this place with musical instruments and also cook
cockerel.
Yes, and they were playing. And when this cock, how to say? Yeah.
When it crows.
Yes, and when it start to make some unusual behaviors, they understand that they catch the soul and they were coming to home with playing musical instrument.
Okay. And singing
too? Not in traditional way, but as I recorded, some of them were singing.
Oh, you recorded this ritual?
Not singing. No, it's old ritual, and nowadays nobody make this.
Oh, I've heard a story.
Yeah.
Involving a Tbilisi hospital and a cockerel.
Yeah, nobody doing this.
Not sure about that. You should talk to the Chamgeliani sisters, maybe.
Yes. Actually, Islam participated in this ritual a lot of time.
Islam Pilpani?
Yes, and he passed away in 2017, as I remember. Maybe 20 years before or 30 years before, this ritual was very active.
Okay, so not so long ago.
Yes, but nowadays no one playing and going by playing, and it's not very common.
I had fun in Tusheti a year or so back. Someone called Marie, who had been learning the Garmani, and she was researching all the old rituals and traditions, and she said, I am a Tushetian woman. Whenever we travel, we must play Garmani. And so part of our journey was on foot, and she got her Garmani down and said, right, now we are going to walk and play.
Wow.
And I asked her when we arrived, I said, is that the first time you've ever done that? And she said, yes. But it was great fun.
Yeah. You see.
Yeah.
And also sometimes they were playing musical instruments when they had somebody who is near died. How to say? Who is ill, and really ill, and they were playing with these string musical instruments
to sort of help their transition to the next world, I guess.
Yeah, and sometimes they asking to bring for them some musical instrument player.
Okay.
Wow. Yes, and also they are playing chuniri and changi in Lipanali ritual.
Yes, so that's a Senetian ritual, isn't it?
Yes, it's for 1 week when they are host their souls.
That's right. They host the souls of the dead, and they lay out food for the souls of their
and they
ancestors.
are playing all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, this situation changed, of course, because of this globalization and electricity and computers and etc. But some of them nowadays also have these rituals.
I wonder why stringed instruments. I wonder why.
I can't say that I'd like to leave this earth to the sound of a bagpipe. I think I'd prefer to leave to the sound of a chonguri.
But because in all the recordings, these manuscripts or legends or poetry texts, they how to say, this string instrument is always connected with souls and illness and these kind of things, and this wind musical instruments is connect with for example, how to say, when they're hunting or doing this kind of things with animals.
More
for example,
active work with animals
in this area. And we actually dolly and these drums are very popular in Georgian musical instruments, but there is not a lot of information about this group of musical instruments connected with this kind of legends or old stories, mostly with string instrument and wind instrument.
Hi listeners, here we are with a gratitude spot. Thank you to our supporters on Ko-fi and Patreon. With your help, we've built the podcast from the ground up. We are totally independent. We rely on your donations to keep the podcast going.
Our patrons support the arts and enable more women's stories to be heard. You can join the club of patrons at patreon.com/voicesoftheancestors.
Or you can buy Holly a mint tea
and Susan a coffee on Ko-fi at ko-fi.com/voicesoftheancestors. When you buy us a coffee, you're actually helping us to purchase microphones and editing software and to reach more isolated singers, to bring you an accessible, exciting and totally unique podcast.
Now, let's get back to the episode.
Do you think in Georgia there's like men and women have different domains? Like one is more about singing and one is more about playing instruments. For example, are women more playing instruments than men, or is it the opposite?
If we will talk about string musical instruments, for example, chonguri is more casual for women.
More usual for women.
Yeah, more usual for women. But it depends on the people, which kind of family they have their traditional or very traditional family, or quite independent women they have, or it depends on this social situation.
Oh, so you think for a woman to play on the chonguri, you need a bit more independence and a bit less traditional?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because and also it depends where they are playing these musical instruments.
Like, is it public or private?
Yes. For example, we know that we had some musical instrument players who played just at home. Yes. But we had the women, somebody could invite them to play for their ill children, for example, and they were very well-known women.
So was that the Batonebo ritual?
For example, in Batonebo ritual, because they invited, for example, 9 chonguri players.
Wow.
Yeah, and some of them, they after the playing, they put these musical instruments next to these children, and they thought that it will help to Batonebi.
Yes. The instrument itself is holding some kind of sacred power there then.
Wow.
Yeah, actually all musical instruments in the world had some spiritual meaning in the beginning,
If you're curious to know more about Batonebo healing rituals, check out episode 3 with Nino Nanaishvili, who leads Ieloni. Here's Ieloni playing the beautiful chonguri introduction to Sabodisho Batonebo.
musical instrument do you play?
Oh, yeah. I'm playing on chonguri.
Mm-hmm.
I started to play on chiboni, but I couldn't.
It does look really hard.
Yes, and also I tried to play on chianuri and chuniri and changi. Yeah, so string musical instruments.
You go for the stringed instruments.
Yeah, I also tried to play on salamuri, but it was terrible, so I stopped. Yeah.
And how did that come about? Was that from people around you playing, or you had a teacher, or?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I always love to talk about this. I made recordings of Polikarpe, Islams, and Givi Pirtshalani.
Okay.
And because the people didn't pay more attention to the musical instrument.
Yeah.
For example, we have self-study recordings. You can listen, separate the first voice, second voice, third voice, but no musical instrument. But this is with musical instrument, and you cannot hear what they're playing. So I made recordings without singing, just part of playing.
And how old were you then?
It was in 2009 with Polikarpe.
Okay.
And I recorded all songs he could play during 3 days.
Wow.
Yes, and if you would like to, I can share it.
Wow.
Yes,
That would be great.
Yes, I'm always giving to people who are interested in this. And also he played different versions of the same songs.
Of course.
Yes, a lot of versions.
I bet.
Yes. Yeah, and you can see that they're playing a very simple melody, but if you want to make a copy, it's very difficult because it has some old style technique.
Okay.
And that's fantastic. Yeah, it's the sound depends on, for example, what is the direction of your finger.
Yeah.
It has different sound.
Yeah.
And also it's important, will you take only one string or two string or three together, and which technique you will use. So these combinations was very, very interesting in Polikarpe's playing.
So let's hear some of that field recording that Nino made of Polikarpe playing chonguri.
Also, we have some scores, some manuscripts about musical instruments, but there is maybe 100 ways how to play them.
One score, but so many different ways of...
So many. And also, I recorded Islam, and his playing also was very interesting, which... how to say, the technique was also very interesting in his playing, and how the people, how the player will make a melody is very important. In which kind of technique, because there are several kind of techniques, and the sound is very, very different. So this was very interesting work for me, because it was first time to record all these songs, pieces, but from only musical instruments. In this period, I recorded Papiko Chamgeliani, who was the
grandmother,
father's sister.
Father's sister, okay.
Yeah, of Cham and Madonna. Yes, and she was playing in very different way. Yeah, this is very interesting.
Playing,
how this?
What was she playing? Which instrument?
She was chuniri.
Chuniri, yeah.
Yes, and she was playing famous songs, but with different version. Yeah. These old people was very different than us.
Yeah.
And maybe they had some knowledge which we didn't have.
I'm sure.
Oh, okay. So that kind of brings me to a question, but that's kind of coming from the past and coming to the present day. What do you think needs to happen to encourage more women instrument players to bring those things from the past to the present? Is there?
Yeah, sometimes it depends on musical instrument. If this musical instrument is quite difficult, less people will play on them. Even women's. Yeah, for example, this gudastur, it's quite difficult, and if you can say that, for example, 100 people are playing on chonguri or panduri, maybe 10 people will play on gudasturi. Yeah, the very important is to have a very close relation with old sound recordings, to understand how they are playing, which kind of techniques they use, because if you are inside this music and techniques and you know these theoretical issues, sometimes you can understand this technique.
Well, I'm so glad that someone like you is here and making recordings and making this categorizations, because now we don't have to worry that these traditions are going to be lost. I mean, I'm sure some things were lost, but I'm so glad that they've been recorded and put down. And
we
they won't be
forgot
lost
a lot
anymore.
of things, but we still have something to research and something to play as an old way. And also we have some very professional people who studied, for example, their grandfathers. For example, Sergo Rushadze, who played in very old style, Georgi Donadze, who played as a Polikarpe teach to him, also Malchazer Konidze. They know some old techniques, and they are playing. It sounds more different than people who can play from scores, for example.
Yeah.
Here's a recording Nino made of Givi Putz-Khelani playing changi.
Old women out there who are waiting to be discovered by a young woman like yourself? Because I know I've read in papers where it's usual in not just ethnomusicology but other studies of societies that women who play privately at home don't get heard. So then they may still be there waiting for us to knock on the door and listen.
I don't know, the folklore and this ethnomusicology is very interesting areas. So even if you think that you recorded everything and you wrote everything and you read everything, every day you can find something new.
Yeah,
this is folklore.
Yeah.
So I remember when my professor was so surprised when I recorded one woman. She was playing on panduri and she was using left hand, and she just played on panduri in different way. Not like this, not like this, like this.
Okay.
She flipped it left hand.
Yeah.
And she was surprised because it was first time for her. She all her life studied musical instruments, and it was first time when she saw this kind of playing technique. Yeah,
that's amazing.
So maybe I'm not sure that they will be the old musical instrument player because all professional people in this field we know. Yeah.
Okay.
But maybe there's somebody who's waiting for us.
I would like to think so.
Especially in eastern part of Georgia.
Yeah.
And also maybe in Swaneti.
Yeah, perhaps so. And I was going to ask you, I nearly forgot, about those photographs I've seen from the turn of the century down in probably Batumi, Guria sort of area, with just many, many women on a stage, all playing together, panduri or chonguri. I'm not sure which panduri, I think.
Yeah. This is... it started from at the beginning of the 20th century.
Okay.
The main figure was Auksenti Megrelidze, for example, who started to make this kind of collective work with playing
almost looks
with
like an orchestra.
Yes, but it's different than this orchestra we are talking about. Yeah. Their style was less variation,
right?
And playing together the same music,
which you need to do if you've got 30 people on a stage playing a panduri all together.
Yeah. So, and we had some tradition when people playing two chonguri, different melodies.
Okay.
But in these choirs, they were playing same melodies.
Because I think you mentioned Eter Dachidze. I mean, I think that's how she teaches today. She's a teacher in Batumi, and she often posts on Facebook pictures of her classes. And
yes,
many players all together.
Yeah, it depends on what is your direction. So what you would do, what is your main idea to do? So her idea was to collect a lot of children together, and if you give 10 minutes to each of them, it will be impossible.
Yeah.
I think this main idea was for Auksenti Megrelidze too. They have same rules. If you want to give opportunity for 30 or 40 women to play together. It's very normal if they will play the same melodies of chonguri, and this is a period when people were exciting to see so many people together. This is not a traditional.
No, it doesn't look like it in the photos, but it's just interesting.
It's kind of a spectacle, isn't it?
It is, it absolutely is.
Yes, and no individualism, and everybody playing the same. And they also choose this kind of songs, which needed only very simple accompaniment.
Here's a recording of Auksenti Megrelidze's choir from Soviet times, probably accompanied by mass chonguris. You can find it on alazani.ge, a great resource for Georgian folk music.
Interested in was, I think, the Trio Mandili have made Georgian folk instruments known throughout the world just because they're so popular. And I know amongst folklorists there's great argument as to how traditional or not they are, but
of course they are not traditional, but what does it mean?
Exactly.
Just nothing. Yeah. If we are talking from scientist side, of course, we can say that this is not traditional songs and this is not traditional technique and etc. But it's also part of our culture.
Yeah. For sure.
And I'm sure on the old period, not everybody was excellent player or singer.
Yeah.
So it's very important to call the correct and the exact name to everything. But it's like a part of our culture and our musical instruments.
Yeah.
And cultures.
Yeah. So we have a question we ask all our guests.
It's usually the last question.
Do you want to ask?
Nino, what does Voices of the Ancestors mean to you?
It's a connection for me. It's a connection, a strong connection which we have to you, I'd say, and I'm always happy to hear about your new podcast or something. Yeah, because I'm very happy that you're interested in this, our culture and our people, and you're spending so many times with us. So it makes me happy. Yeah, it for me it means just maybe friendship. And thank you for doing this. This job. Yeah, I think in very, very soon maybe your recordings will be a very interesting resource for scholars maybe, or for singers or players, and also it's in English.
Yes.
Which is very important for foreigner people to know something interesting and new information for them from Georgian musical culture and people.
Yes.
I don't know.
I think that's the first time that the answer to what does Voices of the Ancestors mean to you is the podcast.
True.
Oh, we're doing something right.
We absolutely are. And although we usually ask that as nearly the last question, I want to give you the opportunity to tell us about you as a maker, because I know you have really exciting projects.
Yeah.
And are wanting to make toys out of locally sourced wood and using local labour and up in the rural areas in Ajara. And part of your idea is to do musical instruments, I think.
Yes, of course.
Tell us more. What's the name of the company? What's the project?
It's named Gogora, which means wheels.
Wheels, yeah.
Yes, wheels in Acharan dialect.
Okay.
Yeah, and they called Gogorais to Acharan toys the grandparents made for children, which has wheels.
Okay.
Yes. It's a very long story, but I will tell in very short sentences. Main idea is to make toys based on Georgian ethnographic themes. Because I think we don't have to make copies from Pinterest or Google.
Yeah, nope.
Because we have a lot of sources to use. And we have opportunity to show people in the world some new toys based on our this folk themes. Yeah. We had a lot of for example musical instruments toys for kids, and also not musical instrument, but kids toy in the villages. And in Achara, for example, this old people always making some handicraft toys for children. And I also want to make a toy museum.
Oh, that'd be such fun!
Yes, because I love this tradition, this still alive.
Still alive, yes. And they're amazing designs, because Didn't you do a project, was it turning some of the embroidery designs into vectors? Am I right?
Yes, I made this project because I wanted to collect all this material, which I have access. Made a lot of pictures, about 3,000 or something. So if somebody wants to make a new socks, they can check maybe 500 socks and understand which kind of colors they can use, which kind of ornaments and how they put together.
Well, I'm going to ask you to send me the link because I know there'll be people listening who love their handicrafts and will just find that resource amazing.
Yes, we'll put that link in the show notes.
Yeah, you know, in the past, maybe 15 years ago, in every family you could find 1, 2, 3 or more women who were making this handicraft work. But the daily life, the style, they changed a lot, and it was near disappeared. Yeah. They had a tradition to make these kind of things together. It's called nadi. When they're doing this job together to make a
to make thread to spin.
Yes, and colored them and
to dye,
then make something for example, women who were going to get married. Yes, and this tradition just destroyed. But nowadays, you know, it's very, very popular in the world to see how women are making something in the mountain. And I'm sure it will become more popular. So my project was because of that. If you don't have a tradition and nobody teach it to you, you can just go and see all these pictures and understand how and what you could do.
And Holly, I think I remember you coming back from Ajara once going, there's this wool making song.
Oh yeah.
Is it a sock making?
Yes, they were singing this song during the work.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, all night.
It's just two voices.
Oh, yeah. Cool. That's so nice.
And with two choirs. And then they could continue with another songs and dance and playing panduri.
So
and
great.
Dance during the night.
Done the wool making, now it's time for dancing.
Yeah, maybe I was thinking to make a Nadi festival, for example.
Yes, please.
Where these women are sitting and doing this.
That sounds brilliant.
And singing and dancing and making this.
Yeah, I'm coming to that festival. Just give me the date.
Yeah. Men can do the cooking. And
Women Nadi.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, why not?
Thank you for listening to Voices of the Ancestors with Holly Taylor-Zuntz and Susan Thompson. Our guest was Nino Razmadze. We've listed all the music used in the show notes and the transcript, and in the transcript you'll also find pictures of the instruments mentioned. So to find that you can visit voicesoftheancestors.co.uk, and while you're there you could support the podcast by clicking donate, and that will show you how to become a supporter on Patreon or Ko-fi. And if you're not in a position to support us financially, you could just share this episode with a friend or on social media, and also rating it and reviewing it really helps us. So thank you, listeners, for helping us grow. You are our amazing marketing team, and thank you for helping keep this podcast sustainable. See you next time for more stories and songs. Bye for now.